Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivedanta. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. So we started with 6th chapter last week. So just a quick recap of the same. We did till verse number 9. We covered up the first section of the chapter that describes about yoga rurukshor and yoga rudha practice. So in the very first verse, we saw how the Lord is defining who is the real sannyasi and who is the real yogi. So anashrita, one who has not taken ashraya or shelter of what? Karam phalam, of the fruits of his work. So one should be detached from the fruits of his work. And karyam karam karoti yaha, though he performs his karam, his duties. Such a person is the true sannyasi. So he has to be performing his duties without being attached to the result. And who is yogi? Yogi means who can control his mind and senses. So one who is detached from the fruits, he can control his minds and senses. And one who has control over his mind and senses, he can be detached from the fruits. So in the second verse, Krishna is telling that basically sannyasi and yogi are the same. And in the third verse, then we saw how Krishna is telling about the 8 angas. We understood. He's telling about the neophyte in the eightfold yoga system. So the eightfold yoga system, we understood the 8 angas of the practice are starting from yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, pratyahar, dharana, dhyan, and samadhi. So from yama till dharana, it's the first stage of the yoga that is called yoga rurukshor. So this includes following some rules, some don'ts, then different bodily postures, then breathing exercises, restraining the senses from sense objects, and beginning of the meditation, that is dharana. So till this point, it is yoga rurukshor stage. That's the stage of the neophyte yogi. After that, it's advanced stage, and that is called yoga rudha stage. That starts from dhyan. Dhyan means advanced meditation. And then is a samadhi, like constant meditation upon the Supreme. So these are the 2 aspects of the yoga practice generally. And this complete ladder, it's called yoga. Beginning of the ladder is yoga rurukshor, and the advanced stage is yoga rudha. And so basically we understood that in yoga rurukshor stage, a person, a yogi, he has to perform nishkam karam yoga as he's practicing the limbs of the yoga also. He performs the other limbs of the yoga practice, and he performs his prescribed duties also without being attached to the fruit. So that's nishkam karam yoga. And when he becomes more advanced, his consciousness, his mind, his senses, everything is purified, then he need not perform the work. That's the yoga rudha stage. At that stage, work can be distraction from him, and he has to only meditate upon the Supreme. Before that, when he's at the stage of yoga rurukshor, if he gives up the work, then he is not because completely purified, so he cannot advance. So unless and until he's purified and he reaches the yoga rudha stage, he has to continue performing his prescribed duties for his complete purification. In the fourth verse, then Krishna defines the yoga rudha platform. So how this person, he gives up all the material desires, sarva sankalpa sannyasi, and he doesn't engage in sense gratification. He gives up all the fruitive activities. And in the fifth verse, again, Krishna told that to give up all the material desires, what is essential is controlling the mind. And in the sixth verse, these 2 verses, they just talk about the mind control, 5th and 6th. So Lord was talking about controlling the mind, which Srila Prabhupada says is the central point of yoga practice. And we discussed it in pretty detail, that how without controlling the mind, it's very difficult to control the senses. And without controlling the senses, it's very difficult to meditate upon the Supreme. So one cannot make any progress in the yoga practice. And how to control the mind and all that we discussed in detail. And then we came to verse number 7, 8, and 9. All these verses, they are describing the yoga rudha stage, characteristics of the advanced stage. So how his jitmana, he has conquered the mind, his prasantasya, he is peaceful, because he doesn't have any demands, no sense gratification, no desire, so he's not agitated, and he's like equipoised in all the situations, manapamanayo, honor, dishonor, nothing disturbs him. Then in the 8th verse, we saw how Prabhupada has given a very important purport, and Prabhupada is explaining how one can achieve Gyan and Vigyan. When one controls the mind and senses and acts according to the dictation or the direction of the Supreme or scriptures, then gradually one develops realization or Vigyan. So the knowledge is Gyan and the realization is Vigyan. So whatever we achieve from the book, the bookish knowledge, with the help of only that, we cannot understand the Supreme, as the Supreme is not subjected to the material materially contaminated mind and senses and intelligence. So what do we have to do? Realized knowledge is not simply by our own efforts. We have to make effort to please Guru and Krishna. And when they are pleased, they award this realization to us and we can apply. So for application of the knowledge, one needs realization. And the realization comes from the mercy of Guru and Krishna. So, and their mercy we get by following their instructions. So that all we discussed. And then verse number, so in this 8th verse again, we understood how this person, he's the Tript Atma, he is fully satisfied. And for him, the gold and Loshtarshma and Kanchana, everything is same, because he sees everything as a part and parcel of Krishna. He doesn't have any desires. He is not attracted by gold or anything. So everything is same for him. And Srila Prabhupada here compared the mundane scholarship or the metal speculations to gold. So this person at advanced stage, yogi, he is not attracted by these speculations at all. And in the 9th verse, this is even higher stage than 8th one, because stone and gold, they are still inanimate objects. They are non-living things. So he doesn't have any desire for sense gratification, so he's not affected by any of them. But here we are talking about the animate beings. So he sees different people on equal platform. So that's even more difficult because of different relationships and all. But this yogi, he sees everybody on the equal platform. So today we will start from verse number 10. This is the second section of the chapter, and it's called Stages in Yoga Practice and Samadhi. Verse number 10. Yogi yunjita satatam atmanam rahasi sthitha ekaki yata chittatma nirashir aprigraha.
Okay. Translation: a transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind, and self in relationship with the Supreme. He should live alone in a secluded place and should always carefully control his mind. He should be free from desires and feelings of possessiveness. Purport: Krishna is realized in different degrees as Brahman, Paramatma, and Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna consciousness means concisely to be always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. But those who are attached to impersonal Brahman or the localized super soul are also partially Krishna consciousness, because the impersonal Brahman is the spiritual ray of Krishna and the super soul is the all-pervading partial expansion of Krishna. Thus, the impersonalist and the meditator are also indirectly Krishna conscious. A directly Krishna conscious person is the topmost transcendentalist, because such a devotee knows what is meant by Brahman and Paramatma. His knowledge of the absolute truth is perfect, whereas the impersonalist and the meditative yogi are imperfectly Krishna conscious. Nevertheless, all of these are instructed herewith to be constantly engaged in their particular pursuits so that they may come to highest perfection sooner or later. The first business of a transcendentalist is to keep the mind always on Krishna. One should always think of Krishna and not forget him even for a moment. Concentration of mind on the Supreme is called samadhi or trance. In order to concentrate the mind, one should always remain in seclusion and avoid disturbance by external objects. He should be very careful to accept favorable and reject unfavorable conditions that affect his realization. And in perfect determination, he should not hanker after unnecessary material things that entangle him by feelings of possessiveness. All these perfections and precautions are perfectly executed when one is directly Krishna consciousness, directly in Krishna consciousness, because direct Krishna consciousness means self-abnegation, wherein there is a very little chance of material possessiveness. Srila Rupa Goswami characterizes Krishna consciousness in this way. I'll read the meaning. When one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Krishna, one is rightly situated above possessiveness. On the other hand, one who rejects everything without knowledge of its relationship to Krishna is not complete in his renunciation. A Krishna conscious person well knows that everything belongs to Krishna, and thus he is always free from feelings of personal possession. As such, he has no hankering for anything on his own personal account. He knows how to accept things in favor of Krishna consciousness and how to reject things unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. He is always aloof from material things because he is always transcendental and he is always alone, having nothing to do with persons not in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a person in Krishna consciousness is a perfect yogi. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. So here the Yoga Ruda stage practice is described. So what a person has to do, he gives up the work and he goes to a secluded place, alone, ekaki. Atmanam rahasya sthita, ekaki yatachit atma. So he has to be alone, and then what he has to do, carefully control his mind. No material desires, nirashir, and aparigraha, no desire for possessiveness. So he renounces everything, goes to a secluded place, and alone he has to meditate upon the Supreme. So he concentrates his mind only on the Supreme. So as we, I said it in the previous class also, we are not very much interested in the process of Dhyāna-yoga, but these principles are applicable for Bhakti Yoga also. So we have to just try to pick up the principles from here. So how Prabhupada here is telling in the second paragraph of the purport. So nevertheless, all of these are instructed herewith to be constantly engaged in their particular pursuit so that they may come to a higher perfection sooner or later. So the first business of a transcendentalist is to keep the mind always on Krishna. But we have to focus on our mind on Krishna. So in the first paragraph, how Prabhupada is explaining about the three degrees of realization of Krishna, Brahman, Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as we already understand now, that Brahman and Paramatma are incomplete realization. So in Bhakti Yoga, we focus upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we also need to meditate upon Krishna. That's the principle for us. One should always think of Krishna and not forget him even for a moment. Concentration of mind on the Supreme is called Samadhi. So for us, the ultimate stage, Samadhi, is always thinking of Krishna, being Krishna conscious in whatever we do. In order to concentrate the mind, one should always remain in seclusion and avoid disturbance by external objects. So how does it work for us? We have to stay in a favorable association, and that's the association of devotees. We have to accept what is favorable for our Krishna consciousness, and we have to avoid what is unfavorable. That is seclusion for us. We have to avoid the unwanted association of the materialistic people. Just staying with devotees, that helps us. That is favorable, and that is seclusion for us. And then one has to be fully determined, and in perfect determination he should not hanker after unnecessary material things that entangle him by feelings of possessiveness. So a Krishna conscious person, he's engaged in yukta vairagya. How Prabhupada is quoting here Srila Rupa Goswami's words, and Prabhuji read the translation. So this what does it tell us? That a Krishna conscious person, he doesn't artificially renounce the things, rather he engages everything in Krishna's service. That is called yukta vairagya. Otherwise it's falgu vairagya, just giving up things and not have given up the full attachment. That doesn't help. So we possess everything, but we utilize that in Krishna's service, in devotee's service. That is yukta vairagya. And so this is how he is very determined, and he uses everything in Krishna's service, having proper understanding that I am just a caretaker. Everything belongs to Krishna. He doesn't have any feeling of possessiveness or anything. In the last paragraph, again, Prabhupada is telling he knows how to accept things in favor of Krishna consciousness. He is always aloof from material things because he's always transcendental. So exclusion or being aloof means being away from the material things and being in the devotional association. He has nothing to do with persons not in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a person in Krishna consciousness is the perfect yogi. So these are the principles for us from this verse, that we have to avoid the materialistic association. We need to have the proper understanding that Krishna is the supreme proprietor. We are just the caretakers and we utilize everything in his service. We have to be determined on our path of bhakti yoga. We have to stay in the devotee association. So that is the lesson for us. Moving on to verse number 11 and 12. शुचौ देशे प्रतिस्थाप्य स्थिरम् आसनम् आत्मनः नाति उच्छ्रितं नाति नीचं चैलाजिन् कुशोत्तरम् तत्र कागरं मनः कृत्वा यच्चितेन्द्रियक्रियः उपविश्यासने युग्न्यात् योगम् आत्मविशुद्धये.
Translation. To practice yoga, one should go to a secluded place and should lay kusha grass on the ground and then cover it with a deer skin and a soft cloth. The seat should be neither too high nor too low and should be situated in a sacred place. The yogi should then sit on it very firmly and practice yoga to purify the heart by controlling his mind, senses, and activities and fixing the mind on one point. Purport. A sacred place refers to places of pilgrimage. In India, the yogis, the transcendentalists, or the devotees all leave home and reside in a sacred place such as Prayaga, Mathura, Vrindavana, Rishikesh, and Haridwar, and in solitude practice yoga where the sacred rivers like Yamuna and the Ganges flow. But often this is not possible, especially for Westerners. The so-called yoga societies in big cities may be successful in earning material benefit, but they are not at all suitable for actual practice of yoga. One who is not self-controlled and whose mind is not undisturbed cannot practice meditation. Therefore, in the Naradya Purana, it is said that in Kali Yuga, the present Yuga or age, when people in general are short-lived, slow in spiritual realization, and always disturbed by various anxieties, the best means of spiritual realization is chanting the holy name of the Lord. Harer Nama, Harer Nama eva kevalam, Kalau nashti eva gatir anyatha. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is chanting the holy name of the Lord. There is no other way. There is no other way. There is no other way. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. So here we start with the Suchau Deshe, that is a sacred place. So the condition again here is one cannot practice this Dhyāna-yoga in cities. So we are just getting into the impracticalities of this yoga system, especially in this Kali Yuga. It cannot be practiced in Bangalore. And are we ready to leave Bangalore and go to a forest? Or will we even find a forest, proper place for performing this yoga? That's why Srila Prabhupada is saying, yeah. So that's why Srila Prabhupada is saying that in Kali Yuga, only Harer Naam is possible. That's the only means of self-realization. Harer Naam, Harer Naam, Harer Naam eva kevalam. That's the only means for cleaning up the Kalau Nasti. The effect of the Kali Yuga can be finished only with Harinam. Otherwise, there is no other way, no other way, no other way. And then the asana should not be like too high, too low. Nati uchritam, nati nicham. We need a deer skin, and but kusha grass. So all these things, like they are just telling us the impracticalities of this Dhyāna yoga for the people of Kali Yuga. That's why we are not very interested in this process. Sitting erect in a straight line and kusha grass and all these things are not possible for us. So Harinam is the best solution. Moving on to verse number 13 and 14. Samam kaya shirogrivam dharayan achalam sthira Samprekshya nashikagram swam dishaschari vrate sthita. Dishaschanvalokayan. प्रसन्त आत्मा विगत भीर ब्रह्मचारी व्रते स्थिता मना संयम्या मच्चितो युक्ता आसिता मत्परः. Manish Prabhu, you would read.
Okay, Mataji.
Translation.
Yeah. Translation by His Grace Easy Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. One should hold one's body, neck, head erect in a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. Thus, with an unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free of sex life, one should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life. Purport. The goal of life is to know Krishna, who is situated within the heart of every living being as Paramatma, the four-handed Vishnu form. The yoga process is practiced in order to discover and see this localized form of Vishnu and not for any other purpose. The localized Vishnu Murti is the plenary representation of Krishna, dwelling within one's heart. One who has no pro- program to realize this Vishnu Murti is uselessly engaged in mock yoga practice and is certainly wasting his time. Krishna is the ultimate goal of life, and the Vishnu Murti situated in one's heart is the object of yoga practice. To realize this Vishnu Murti within the heart, one has to observe complete abstinence from sex life. Therefore, one has to leave home and live alone in a secluded place. Remaining seated as mentioned above, one cannot enjoy sex life daily at home or elsewhere and attend a so-called yoga class and thus become a yogi. One has to practice controlling the mind and avoiding all kinds of sense gratification, of which sex life is the chief. In the rules of celibacy written by the great sage Yajnavalkya it is said, Karmana manas vacha sarvamastu sarvada sarvatra maithuna tyago brahmacharyam prachaksati. The vow of the brahmacharya is meant to help one's complete abstain from sex indulgence in work, words, and mind at all times, under all circumstances, in all places. No one can perform correct yoga practice through sex indulgence. Brahmacharya is taught, therefore, from childhood, when one has no knowledge of sex life. Children at the age of 5 are sent to the Gurukul, or the place of the spiritual master, and the master trains the young boys in the strict discipline of becoming brahmacharis. Without such practice, no one can make advancement in any yoga, whether it be dhyana, jnana, or bhakti. One who, however, follows the rules and regulations of married life, having a sexual relation only with his wife, and that also under regulation, is called a brahmachari. Such a restrained householder brahmachari may be accepted in the bhakti school, but the jnana and dhyana school do not even admit householder brahmacharis. They require complete abstinence without compromise. In the bhakti school, a householder brahmachari is allowed controlled sex life because the cult of bhakti is so powerful that one automatically loses sexual attraction, being engaged in the superior service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 2.59, it is said, Vishaya vinivartanti niradharasya dehina ras varjanam raso api asya param dhit nirvatati. Whereas others are forced to restrain themselves from sense gratification, a devotee of the Lord automatically refrains because of superior taste. Other than devotee, no one has any information of that superior taste. Because one cannot be fearless unless one is fully in Krishna consciousness. A conditioned soul is fearful due to his perverted memory, his forgetfulness of his eternal relationship with Krishna. The Bhagavatam 11.2.37 says, Bhayam Datyabhinishas Sayed Isad Patisya Viprayo Smrita. Krishna consciousness is the only basis for fearlessness. Therefore, perfect practice is possible for a person who is Krishna conscious. And since the ultimate goal of yoga practice is to see the Lord within, a Krishna conscious person is already the best of all yogis. The principles of the yoga system mentioned herein are different from those of the popular so-called yoga societies. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. So again, we see the impracticalities of this yoga system. One has to sit erect, holding one's body, neck, and head in a straight line, and focus on the tip of the nose, unagitated and subdued mind, devoid of fear, and he should have complete control over his senses. Then only he can meditate upon the Paramatma in the heart, the Vishnu Murti in the heart. And as we read in the last verse also, kusha grass and all that. So kusha grass is basically needed to keep the insects away when the person is absorbed in this meditation. So the kusha grass, it keeps all the insects away from his place. And again, we understand from this verse, for how long can we sit with our body, neck, and head erect? The very first thing we are not able to do during japa. How many postures we change? Can we sit in that posture for even 16 rounds, 2 hours? No, right?
No.
So for this Dhyāna yoga, till we realize the Paramatma in our heart, it's just not possible for us. And then another condition is brahmachari prate. So only celibates can practice this yoga. It's not meant for the householders. In the very first purport and throughout, Prabhupada is stressing on this point that one need to have complete control over his senses, and to realize the Vishnu Murti within the heart, one has to observe complete abstinence from sex life. So one has to leave home, one has to stay away from any relationship with the opposite sex. And this, if he engages in any activity, then he cannot realize the Paramatma. So this is definitely not meant for the householders. One has to be a celibate in all ways. In the second paragraph, again, Prabhupada is talking about the brahmachari vrata and all. And in the Bhakti school, a householder brahmachari is allowed to control sex life because the cult of Bhakti Yoga is so powerful that one automatically loses the attraction, being engaged in the superior service of the Lord. So in Bhakti, householders, they automatically lose the taste for all the inferior things. Vishya vinivartate nirharasya dehina rasvarjam raswapyasya param drishtva nivartate. Param drishtva. When we have a higher taste, we automatically lose the lower taste. So Bhakti Yoga, it is very much practical for us, and it helps us to grow, advance in a natural, in a more easier way. And one has to be fearless. That is Vigat Bhi. So again, in Krishna consciousness, when we take shelter of the Lord, when we depend upon Him for everything, in all the situations, we can become fearless. So Bhakti Yoga again and again is the best thing for us to follow in the Kali Yuga. It's very much practical and easier. Okay, verse number 15. Yunjan evam sadatmanam yogi niyata manasah shantim nirvana paramam mat samstham adigachati.
Translation. Thus, practicing constant control of the body, mind, and activities, the mystic transcendentalist, his mind regulated, attains to the kingdom of God or the abode of Krishna by cessation of material existence. Purport. The ultimate goal in practicing yoga is now clearly explained. Yoga practice is not meant for attaining any kind of material facility. It is to enable the cessation of all material existence. One who seeks an improvement in health or aspires after material perfection is no yogi according to Bhagavad Gita. Nor does cessation of material existence entail one's entering into the void, which is only a myth. There is no void anywhere within the creation of Lord. Rather, the cessation of material existence enables one to enter into the spiritual sky, the abode of the Lord. The abode of the Lord is clearly described in Bhagavad Gita as that place where there is no need of sun, moon, or electricity. All the planets in the spiritual kingdom are self-illuminated like the sun in material sky. The kingdom of God is everywhere, but the spiritual sky and the planets thereof are called Paramdhama or superior abodes. A consummate yogi who is perfect in understanding Lord Krishna, as is clearly stated herein by the Lord himself, mat chitah mat parah mat sthanam, can attain real peace and can ultimately reach his supreme abode, Krishna Loka, known as Goloka Vrindavan. In the Brahma Samhita 5.37, it is very clearly stated, Goloka eva nivasate akhilatma bhuta. The Lord, although residing always in his abode called Goloka, is the all-pervading Brahman and the localized Paramatma as well, by dint of his superior spiritual energies. No one can reach the spiritual sky Vaikuntha or enter into Lord's eternal abode Golok Vrindavan without the proper understanding of Krishna and his plenary expansion Vishnu. Therefore, a person working in Krishna consciousness is the perfect yogi because his mind is always absorbed in Krishna's activities. Savai Manah Krishna Padarvindayo. In the Vedas also, Shveteshvara Upanishad 3.8, we learn Tam eva viditvati mrityum iti. One can overcome the path of birth and death only by understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. In other words, perfection of the yoga system is the attainment of freedom from material existence and not some magical jugglery or gymnastic feats to befool innocent people. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhupada. So this is the goal, ultimate goal for the Dhyāna-yoga. What is it? He is going to achieve Nirvana Paramam Mat Samstham Adhikachati. So he will be freed from the material existence and he will achieve or he will attain the spiritual sky. That's the kingdom of God. So this is the goal of Dhyāna yoga, but it's a very gradual process. The time taken and the difficulties faced, it may vary from yogi to yogi, and it's not an instant result. It's not that easy for anybody, of course. So, but the goal is for them also it's spiritual sky. They can get freed from the material existence, though they reach only till the Paramatma level. After facing so many difficulties, so many challenges, so many impracticalities, the realization is still not complete in Dhyana Yoga. They still have one step to go further. And the ultimate goal is this. Then Prabhupada is telling, yeah, so he's just telling us about the spiritual world and how we can get out of the material world. No one can reach the spiritual sky or enter Goloka Vrindavan without the proper understanding of Krishna. So Dhyana Yogi, he is not having proper understanding of Krishna. So he is still not eligible to enter the Vaikuntha or Goloka Vrindavan. But a person working in Krishna consciousness, he is the perfect yogi because his mind is always absorbed in Krishna's activities. Savaimana Krishna Padarvindayo. So he has complete understanding of Krishna and he's totally meditating upon Krishna all the time. So he can very easily attain the kingdom of God. So last line again, Prabhupada says, in other words, perfection of the yoga system is the attainment of freedom from material existence and not some magical jugglery or gymnastic feats to befool innocent people. So when these Dhyana yogis, they are undergoing so many austerities, they do get some, what do you call that, mystic powers. But that is not the goal. That should not be the goal. The goal is to get out of the material existence, not to just use those whatever mystic powers and whatever jugglery they can do to earn some money and to befool people. If somebody gets into that, then he's totally distracted. He's just not focused. He's not determined to achieve his goal. So one has to be very careful. Verse number 16. Nati ashnatas yogosti na jaikantmana shatana na chati swapana shilasya jagrato neva cha arjuna. I can read this maybe. Okay, so the translation and purport by His Divine Grace is Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. There is no possibility of one's becoming a yogi, O Arjuna, if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or does not sleep enough. But regulation of diet and sleep is recommended herein for the yogis. Too much eating means eating more than is required to keep the body and soul together. There is no need for men to eat animals because there is an ample supply of grains, vegetables, fruits, and milk. Such simple foodstuff is considered to be in the mood of goodness according to the Bhagavad Gita. Animal food is for those in the mood of ignorance. Therefore, those who indulge in animal food, drinking, smoking, eating food which is not first offered to Krishna, will suffer sinful reactions because of eating only polluted things. Bhunjate te tab agham papa, ye pachanti atma karanat. Anyone who eats for sense pleasure or cooks for himself, not offering his food to Krishna, eats only sin. One who eats sin and eats more than is allotted to him cannot execute perfect yoga. It's best that one eat only the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna. A person in Krishna consciousness does not eat anything which is not first offered to Krishna. Therefore, only the Krishna conscious person can attain perfection in yoga practice. Nor can one who artificially abstains from eating, manufacturing his own personal process of fasting, practice yoga. The Krishna conscious person observes fasting as it is recommended in the scriptures. He does not fast or eat more than is required, and he is thus competent to perform yoga practice. One who eats more than required will dream very much while sleeping, and he must consequently sleep more than is required. One should not sleep more than 6 hours daily. One who sleeps more than 6 hours out of 24 is certainly influenced by the mood of ignorance. A person in the mood of ignorance is lazy and prone to sleep a great deal. Such a person cannot perform yoga. So this verse basically is telling us about the discipline one has to follow in order to practice this yoga system. And again, as we said that we have to focus upon the principles. So these principles work for the bhaktas also, for bhakti yoga also. How we have to follow a disciplined life, how we have to have a regulated eating and sleeping. Uh, Everything should be in a regulated way. Same thing will be discussed in the next verse also. So here basically, if we have discipline, if we have some regulation over our activities, then it becomes easier for us to practice the yoga system, to practice the Dhyana yoga. And in the Bhakti yoga, all these things are natural for us. The process, the program which is designed by Srila Prabhupada, that makes everything so natural and so easier for us, because the devotees are in mode of goodness. The food we eat is in mode of goodness. The program that we follow is in mode of goodness. We have to wake up early, we have to sleep early, we have to eat only the foodstuffs which are offered to Krishna. And what Krishna eats? No animals, nothing like that. So we are naturally eating only grains, vegetables, fruits, and milk, and that too sin-free food, which is offered first to Krishna. We are not preparing anything. Bhunjate tatavagham papa ye pachanti atma karanat. People who prepare food for their sense pleasure, for themselves, they are eating only papa. Bhunjate te aghav papa. They eat only sins. So we cook it for Krishna, we offer it to him, make it sin-free, and then we eat it. So for devotees, the eating habit is also regulated, the sleeping habit is also regulated. And eating again, it's regulated because we eat only prasadam, and we avoid the outside food. That's why we don't eat too much also. Of course, prasadam we do prefer eating a lot, but it helps us to control because we don't eat anything and everything and anytime and anywhere. So that way it's very much regulated for us. Okay, so moving on to verse number 17. Again, it's talking about the disciplined life, and it's a very important verse also. युक्त आहार विहारस्य युक्त चेतस्य कर्मसु युक्त स्वप्न अबोधस्य योगो भवति दुःखः. Manish Prabhu, you can read again maybe.
Okay, Mata. Translation and purport by His Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He who is regulated in his habit of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. Extravagance in the matter of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, which are demand of the body, can block advancement in the practice of yoga. As far as eating is concerned, it can be regulated only when one is practiced to take and accept prasadam, sacrificed food. Lord Krishna is offered according to Bhagavad Gita 9.26. Vegetables, flowers, food, grains, fruits, grains, milk, etc. In this way, a person in Krishna consciousness become automatically trained not to accept food not meant for human consumption or not in the category of goodness. As far as sleeping is concerned, a Krishna conscious person is always alert in the discharge of his duties in Krishna consciousness, and therefore any unnecessary time spent sleeping is considered a great loss. Avyartha kalavatam. A Krishna conscious person cannot bear to pass a minute of his life without being engaged in the service of the Lord. Therefore, his sleeping is kept to a minimum. His ideal in this respect is Srila Rup Goswami, who was always engaged in the service of Krishna and who could not sleep more than 2 hours a day, and sometimes not even that. Thakur Haridas would not even accept prasadam, not even sleep for a moment without finishing his daily routine of chanting, which is beats 300,000 names. As far as work is concerned, a Krishna conscious person does not do anything which is not connected with Krishna's interest, and thus his work is always regulated and is untainted by sense gratification. Since there is no question of sense gratification, there is no material leisure for a person in Krishna consciousness. And because he is regulated in all his work, speech, sleep, wakefulness, and all other bodily activities, there is no material misery for him. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhupada. It's very simple to understand, but again, the focus is on a regulated and disciplined life, no wastage of time at all. So we understand that in the main cause of diseases or anxieties in the material world is unregulated lifestyle. It's very much practical explanation by Krishna given here. How regulated life can help us keep control over our mind and senses also. Otherwise, we are totally disturbed. And if one wants to practice yoga, then body should be fit and healthy. And for that, one should be regulated in all these activities, in eating, sleeping, recreation, work, everything. It should be regulated. Not too much and not too less, but balanced. And keeping a balance can be a challenge. It is a challenge, but that should be our goal. If we want to practice our bhakti yoga also properly, we need to have a balance of everything. Recreation also. That's why we devotees go for retreats, we go for some picnics also. We have some programs together. Everything is important. And how, again, as we discussed, it has become easier for us in the association of devotees following the programs set by Srila Prabhupada. As far as sleeping is concerned, Krishna conscious person is always alert in discharging of his duties in Krishna consciousness, and therefore any unnecessary time spent sleeping is considered a great loss. So devotees, they take rest, but not in ignorance, just to keep their body healthy so that they can be fresh to again serve Krishna, and they don't waste time, just a short nap. Avyarth kalatvam, avyarth kal. They don't let the time go vyarth. A Krishna conscious person cannot bear to pass a minute of his life without being engaged in the service of the Lord. Otherwise, it's just wastage of the time, which is the most precious thing. As Chanakya Pandit says, nothing in the world can buy us the time which has just passed by, the moment which has passed by. So how valuable the time is. So devotees, they realize this, or we should realize this, the importance of the time, and we should utilize every single minute, every single second in Krishna's service, in advancing towards Krishna. So sleeping should be kept to a minimum, but of course we need proper sleep to stay healthy. And then yeah, Rupa Goswami's example is given here, how he would sleep only for 2 hours a day. So definitely we don't have to copy these realized souls like the Goswamis and Haridas Thakur. We are not at that stage, but we need to understand that how we need to regulate our sleep and should not waste our time. And Srila Haridas Thakur, he will not accept prasadam without chanting 300,000 names. So we can't do that, but we can have our own goal set that, okay, in the morning, I need to chant at least 4 rounds, at least 8 rounds, at least this much rounds, and then only I should have something. So at whatever stage we are, we can set our goal and we can practice this. And the last line, and because he is regulated in all his work, speech, sleep, wakefulness, and all other bodily activities, there is no material misery for him. So this is the translation of the last part of the verse, Yogo Bhavati Dukkha. So at least materially, then the person will be happy if he has a regulated lifestyle, if everything is regulated. So then dukkha, his pains, his diseases, his anxieties, they can be diminished. Okay, so far we have seen how impractical the Dhyāna-yoga system is for us, how one has to be ekaki, alone, where in a suchavdeshe, in a sacred place, in seclusion, and he should be sitting on kushagras, and he should be holding his body all erect, and he should be devoid of any fear, completely meditating upon the Paramatma in his heart. And he has to practice Brahmachari Vrat also. He should be unagitated. And that's how then slowly, gradually, after practicing so much austerity, he can attain the spiritual world. He can get out of the material existence. And even then, he doesn't get to Vaikuntha or Goloka Vrindavan. That is incomplete realization. So Prabhupada also tells us that you eat, but don't eat more. That's all. So otherwise, there is no possibility of one becoming a yogi. So we need to have complete. And in the last verse only, I think we read about fasting also. So how people design fasting these days on their own. We don't have to do that. The fasting should also be practiced according to scriptures. Like how we do Ekadashi fasting, Janmashtami fasting, or some Acharya's appearance, disappearance, fasting till noon and all. So whatever is told by the scriptures, that fasting alone can help us in advancement in purification. And that is scientifically and spiritually, both ways, it's very beneficial for us. Otherwise, whatever material fastings people these days design, diet plans and all, they help them only for the health reasons maybe, and that too for some time, and no spiritual benefit at all. No need to follow all those things. If we have the natural diet plan, Krishna Prasadam only, then everything is good. No other diet plan is needed. So it's 8:05. Chitresh Prabhu, I think it will be too late for you. We still have many verses to go ahead. If you have any question or if you want to share something, maybe we can have 2 minutes for that. Manish Prabhu, Chitresh Prabhu, any question, any comment, any realization you want to share? There's nothing.
No questions.
Okay, Prabhuji. Okay, so we can meet next week then. Yeah, it was a short class today. But anyways, we'll continue next week. Hare Krishna, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai.